latest Iris session brought to you by BrightRock. Welcome to our Google Hangout. I think we've got a fascinating discussion for you this evening. I've got two wonderful guests. I'll introduce them in a couple of seconds. We're talking about trends. Not only trends for 2015, but I think we might be able to look into our crystal balls and go a little bit further than that. Now, BrightRock is a financial services provider. It operates in the life insurance market, and its interest in change and how it affects people derives from the fact that its life insurance offering is uniquely structured to change at all times. So why am I telling you all of this? Well, because BrightRock started the Change Exchange. It's an online resource center that provides people with the safe space to ask questions. And we are asking you to ask questions as well. If you're here as part of this Google Hangout, ask questions. Fire away. We'll be answering some of those questions. There are times when everything from one's sense of identity to one's personal finances are challenged, like when you start a new job, when you start a new business, when you're buying a home. There are many opportunities, many occasions where big change happens in your life. Tonight we're here to focus on a topic that has an impact on all spheres of our lives, and that's the trends of 2015. What's hot, what's not, what do we have to get used to, how to make the best of the year that's coming up. Now, two people who can talk most eloquently, more eloquently than I, about these things are joining me on our Google Hangout, and let me introduce them to you. First of all, a man, and what a title to have, an innovator, a visionary, Dion Chang. Does the title visionary rest easily on your shoulders, Dion?
Good evening, David. Not really, because neither does sort of futurist, but I really love what I do, and you can sort of, to an extent, glimpse into a crystal ball, but I've learned in doing this for about 10 years now that you should only really be about 20 minutes ahead of the curve rather than 2 hours ahead of the curve, because if you're 2 hours ahead of the curve, you scare the horses and people don't believe what you're doing. So you've got to kind of judge the trajectory of a trend very, very carefully, but we managed to be able to do that at Flex Trends.
Well, you're the first person I've interviewed who is described as a visionary, so I'm delighted to have that. And I have been looking at some of the research you've been doing, some of the things you've been saying. I know you're going to be absolutely fascinating, as will our other guest. Trudi Makhaya is also with us. Now, Trudi is a micro-economist. She's an independent economist, formerly with the Competition Commission, but it really is that economist's hat that you're going to be wearing tonight, isn't it, Trudi?
Absolutely. I think the idea would be to talk about the economic trends that are coming forward, to think of ways that they impact on ordinary citizens, and how to think about this big topic that is often very daunting. What is happening in my economic environment? How do I deal with the changes that I don't have control over, but certainly have an impact in my life? I think that would be a very important thing for us to engage on this evening. And I'm always happy to talk about the economy, what it means, and just also hearing what people are most anxious and concerned about.
Well, I've been saying to both Dion and Trudi before we started this Google Hangout that Dion is very much going to be Mr. Buzz, Mr. Excitement, because there's so many wonderful trends that we can look forward to, fascinating trends as well that we have seen developing over 2014 and will continue into 2015. And Trudi, I believe, is the person who's going to give us the reality check, put the brakes on expectations. If we run ahead of ourselves, if we run further than the 20 minutes that Dion was talking about. So Trudi, I am going to start with you. When you look at me going forward, and I find it poignant as we sitting preparing for this hangout that we're talking about backup systems in case we have load shedding. I see a banner from the Star newspaper talking about Kuberg's woes. Obviously, this whole issue of power is going to have a dramatic impact on the economy in 2015. Expand on that and tell me other trends, economic trends of 2015 that we need to be aware of.
So we go into 2015 very much enjoying the benefits of a windfall in the form of a lower oil price. So that's actually been very good news in the sense that consumers now have, disposable income. The petrol price today is going down, reflecting that international trend. So that's the good news part of it. But then what do you do with that? What does it mean for economic growth? It could mean a lot. It could mean that consumers are able to spend on goods and services that entrepreneurs are providing. It could mean greater economic activity. But is that going to happen? Not necessarily. Because of the infrastructure constraints that we're facing, we're now in a situation where what could have been an opportunity in terms of the oil price now is a wasted opportunity because our production can expand in the same way. And it's not just electricity. There are other challenges in our ports, infrastructure challenges, in roads, in the way we get things to market, in our labor markets. There are all of these inefficiencies that mean that when something good happens, actually the impact isn't as much as it should be, or it isn't as impactful as it should be. Then there's other benefits that we can be enjoying. A weaker exchange rate for many people is a negative thing. It suggests a weaker economy. Yet at the same time, it could mean that we become more competitive. It could mean that our exports become cheaper in international markets. Once again, over the past year and going into this year, we're going to see our exchange rate weakening, but will we be able to reap that competitiveness boost? Unfortunately, not as much as we could have had we had a more productive economy. And so there are potential sources or potential trends that could mean that we grow faster than the 2.5% or so that we're going to see this year. But because of these real infrastructure constraints, we're not able to go much faster than that. And it's only when those underlying issues, structural issues, are dealt with, that we could say that we have an economy that is on a more progressive and productive track. Other trends that we're seeing is that even though in South Africa recently, last week, our exchange rates were kept on hold, which is once again a good thing for many consumers and those who are indebted, that also can't go on for too long because the rest of the world certainly are the ones that set the agenda for us, like the US, are going to be increasing their interest rates. So we might have this relief in the short term, but going forward, interest rates are likely to go higher than to stay the same. And those who've been talking about a potential rate cut, I think we're being extremely hopeful. We're also not going to see that anytime in the near future.
A comprehensive answer, Dion. I'm going to bring you in there. Do you wear an economist hat at any stage of your life, Dion?
I wouldn't say an economist hat, but I do study the interconnectivity between all of those pillars. So whether it's political, whether it's sort of social dynamics, as well as sort of economy, because the trends that I track are all interlinked. And which is why I think it was kind of very, very pertinent that we've decided to call we do a generic trend forecast for every year. And over the past couple of years, we've been slowly crossing into a new world order, adjusting to that. There's been a lot of disruptive technologies, but we've really named this 2015 the year of disorder, where disorder is the way of the new world order. And you are seeing the signs of disorder, whether it be political, starting as far back as 2011 from the Occupy Wall Street. So the economic disorder is really spilling over into that kind of, and feeding into the social and political disorder, because we're seeing rapid inequality. South Africa might wear the horrible crown of being the most unequal society on the planet, but in every emerging nation, wherever you're starting to see it, the impact of sluggish economies and that downturn, and a prolonged downturn, which is sort of trying to come out of this what we're now calling the Great Recession, is really, really sort of fueling different social trends. So on the cover of Time magazine, which is I think this week, it's the current one, is talking about the sharing economy. And I think all of these kind of pressures on it, economic pressures, especially on the middle class, because what we've been tracking for a number of years is the sort of the emergence of a global economy, which is an hourglass economy. So you're getting extreme wealth that's burgeoning, the extreme poverty, and the middle class, and especially in South Africa, you're starting to feel that you're being squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. And as Trudi says, this kind of light relief, the petrol price is going down. Just even before we went live, I was listening to people phoning on the radio station saying, gosh, the price of petrol that's dropped has saved, it's going to save me 500 rand, 800 rand every month. But in the greater scheme of things, you are seeing these new trends coming through of people sharing, and you're seeing it in big businesses. So, for example, a company like Airbnb, where you literally swap homes, or you're staying in people's apartments and homes around the world. When they first launched, and the founders were trying to actually get funding to raise this model. The famous stories in one of the fundraising things, one of the potential investors actually moved out the room. He said, "This is a preposterous idea. How can it possibly work?" And now, a company like Airbnb is booking more hotel or rooms, let's say not hotel rooms, but accommodation, than a big group like the Hilton. So you're really seeing this disorder, and it stems from state of economy, political disorder. You're all seeing this reverberation, and this big kind of net, the social net, is being twitched on one end, and the whole web is starting to shake.
I'm very interested in this concept. I was reading on your website, Flux Trends, this concept of this disorder. I must say I didn't understand it as well as you've put it now. I think I've got a better view of it. I saw it more, I was looking at real disorder in terms of EFF disrupting Parliament, ISIS causing global scares in the way that they are waging war. Or does that form part of the disorder that you speak about?
Yes, because in the generic presentation that I'm talking about, which we're actually launching next week, there's 6 pillars in that report. So it goes. We use an acronym which is TRENDS. So it goes from technology, retail and marketing, the state of the economy, the natural world, diplomacy, and social and cultural trends. It's a very rounded 360 look at the state of the world, and that disorder permeates through everything. So yes, it is political disorder. It's about the EFF disrupting, but it's also very importantly, what my personal thing that I really love tracking is disruptive technologies, and you've started to see companies like your Ubers and things completely get up the noses of a lot of established transport associations, taxi associations, because this is the way we used to do things in the old world order in the 20th century. And now you're starting to see a whole new wave of things and things being done differently. And the other pillar that I track very, very carefully are your millennial generation. And those are really going to be game changers. And those are the people that are driving new concepts like the shared economy, like Airbnb. And, if I was possibly in the automotive industry, I'd also start to be very, very worried because, the stats that are coming around is that young people, especially in developed countries with good infrastructure, are not even considering buying cars anymore. And in fact, I've got a few friends in Cape Town who have started using Uber and public transport, and they are starting to question whether or not they should actually buy a car, because if you look at the maintenance of the car over 5 years or 8 years compared to maybe what I call transient ownership, it actually balances out. So we're really entering into a very, very interesting space, and I'm not sure where it's going to go, but disruption and disorder is going to be part of that.
Well, I'm going to go through those particular titles that you refer to bring up that the word trends in a little bit more detail. But Trudi, let me go back to you. I mentioned EFF, and we all eyes on Parliament on the 12th of January. The President opens the next session of Parliament, and obviously I think the headlines tend to be, will EFF disrupt? What I'm more interested in, what is he going to say? What should he say? In your view, the President sets well, it's exactly that. It's the state of the nation. What is the state of the nation? What would you anticipate if you were delivering that speech? What are the key things you'd want to point out?
I think, there's a lot that is distracting us from the real issues when it comes to the state of the nation. So I think there will be a lot of drama around that. What would he be focusing on? I think in an ideal world where there isn't this much focus on perhaps even his personal issues and obviously what EFF is raising around Gandla. It should be taking back the nation to the basics and saying, well, we're in trouble in many ways. We've hit a crossroads, and the only reason really why we're not in crisis is because we've been handed in these gifts like a decline in the oil price, which are only temporary and which will not take us far. So the question would then be, what are the elements? What would be the main pillars of an economy that's thriving, that's productive, that's going to take us forward? And so I think, if we had to put it in different categories, one would obviously be economic sustainability, not looking about for the economy of today, but the economy of the future. I mean, some of the trends we've touched on, for instance, is South Africa geared up to actually take advantage of them and to be able to move forward into the world, or are we going to lag behind? Are South African citizens skilled enough, for instance, to take advantage of some of the innovations that come with a sharing economy? Are they able to participate in a global media space? Are they able to participate in ways that they can plug into these offerings that the rest of the world is enjoying? So economy would be one pillar where it would have to be a sense of this is how it's going to be a different way of doing business going forward. And I think you would need to talk tough, because what we do have is an economy that is very much still in the grip of, believe it or not, I think sometimes you don't believe this, but high wages compared to our peers, and also high profit margins in terms of our corporates. And so how do we become more competitive in an economy in the sense that we're not a first world economy, and yet we almost operate with first world profit expectations and wage expectations, and yet with third world infrastructure and third world prospects? How do we get to a state where obviously we can't compete with China, but we should be trying to find a way with some of our emerging market peers, some of the other BRIC nations, to reform in a way that will make us more competitive relative to them. And so that would entail a lot of sacrifice from all the major stakeholders. It would be a lot of sacrifice from organized labor movements in terms of some of the protections that are very necessary but sometimes get in the way of, for instance, integrating young people into the economy. They will also have to sacrifice in terms of executive compensation expectations, and also shareholders in terms of some of the returns that they expect to see if we're going to have a sense that we have an economy where, for instance, the prices of basic inputs are not as high as they are, and one that introduces a bit more competition in the way that it functions. I think, obviously, having been at the Competition Commission, one has seen a lot of anti-competitive type behavior. And so how do you get the corporate sector on board, A, to ensure that you eradicate that kind of behavior, but secondly, not just the corporate sector, but financing and everything around that to ensure that you're getting new entrants with new ideas into the economy. So all of that sacrifice and reform work that needs to be done to get the economy on that trajectory would be what I would expect to see in the state of the nation. And in some ways, it would be reiterating some parts of the NDP, emphasizing others and bringing them to the fore, such as, for instance, reforming the civil service, and also reiterating the fact that there will be consequences to parts of government or parts of the state that are not implementing the targets set out in the medium-term strategic framework, which is meant to be aligned to the National Development Plan. If I were him, I'd also be looking at legislation that his parliament is presenting, his executive is presenting to him, and with a view to say, is it actually in line with the objectives of the National Development Plan that we're trying to get to, is legislation that's coming out fostering an open economy, productive, that has acknowledgement of the role of foreign investors, acknowledgement of the role of the informal economy, entrepreneurs. There's lots of legislation that either conflicts with that, sometimes quite seriously, or is even worse, indifferent to what the NDP is trying to do. So I would want to around that.
Dion, I'm going to come to you now. Sorry, Trudi, I do want to move away from the big picture. I think you've sketched for us a very comprehensive view of what the president should be saying. I think what I want to do now is move the conversation and look at the way in which the trends of 2015 are going to impact on our lives. I think we've got the big picture now. The economy obviously affects all of us very deeply. We understand that now. But let's have a look at some of the trends for any person who's undergoing big change in their life, getting a job, moving house, anything like that. And Dion, you picked up on the various issues of technology, of retail and marketing, economy, natural world. Let's have a look at some of those trends, which will have a bearing on the way we make decisions, take decisions, and how decisions influence our lives. And let's start with technology. What are those trends for 2015?
Well, I think the ones that are the evolution, because every year they sort of seem there's this new thing. So there's always, this is the best thing since sliced bread kind of technology messages that you get. And what I'm really starting to track and see what's coming through are technology trends that are going to impact two industries very specifically. So you're starting to see the effect of digitization hit various industries. So it's for me, it's not a specific technology, because you can go from driverless cars to drones, but that's about 3 years off, or 3 to 5 years off. But the ones that are really going to start impacting the two industries that I want to focus on is possibly healthcare and financial services. And if you start looking at where the technology of wearable tech has come, so wearable tech was the darling of 2014. It's now had this romance with the fashion industry. And you're starting to see, I read something this afternoon about wearable tech becoming more and more invisible. So you're not going to have something as sort of prominent as something that you put on your wrist. People are saying, well, that's all very nice, but that was the fitness craze of 2014. What I find is really interesting is the digitization of healthcare services. So you are going to see it's about in the first quarter, there is going to be the first in South Africa, the concept is called remote patient monitoring. And that is where you literally Skype into your doctor and you book a Skype call and they do a diagnosis. The interesting thing for me, where we are in terms of trends and technology, because we're moving so fast with technology, is that legislation and regulation haven't caught up. So I met with the developers of this new service, and it's going to be called My Doctor 24. They've been given a lot of flack by the medical fraternity because they said, well, you can't allow a doctor to give a proper diagnosis telephonically or over Skype. So they've had to go find sort of loopholes, and this is where we're going with all of this new technology, is that you are able to assess the urgency of that patient's case. But if you just think about the ripple effect of wearable tech and where it's going to go, so for anybody that's not familiar with it, I'm wearing a piece of wearable tech. I've seen some amazing pieces which look like pieces of jewelry for ladies, which you decide what vital signs you want to track for the day. So pollen count, vital statistics, this, that, and you almost customize what you're going to track that day. So if you need to Skype into a doctor, they will then, through the miracle of cloud computing, just access your vital signs in real time, and they can give you a diagnosis with that. Where this is going is, and I have a lot of arguments about the future of drones, but I've seen too much evidence of where it's going. So I've already seen a kind of a Kickstarter. They're getting funding for it. It's called an ambulance drone. And if you Google ambulance drone, you will see that they send the scenario is someone's father collapses in a shopping mall. The girl phones into emergency services, and they said, "Don't worry, we've dispensed the drone. The drone's on its way." It ticks all the trend boxes. It's a 3D printed drone, so it's lighter, it flies faster, it's got a camera in it. It picks up the GPS of the person who's calling it, so it goes directly to that person. The drone lands, the person says, just go outside the shopping center, and as the drone approaches, it says, "We see you, put your phone away, we can speak through the drone now." The drone lands, it says, "Okay, carry the drone to your father," and they said, "We'll take it from there." The camera kind of assesses, I think he needs a defibrillator, and out of the drone comes two little packs, which they put onto the guy's chest, and they say, "Stand back," and the drone does a little bit of an emergency service. So this is really the reality of, and it's not science fiction, it's really, really happening, and where we're going with this. So I think the healthcare services, and to a large extent the financial services, have been shielded from digitization. So your entertainment industries, your print media industries, all of those kind of things have been hit by digitization. And these are the industries that are going to hit you. And for life-changing moments, these are going to sort of converge into a very, very interesting time. So the trends I'm talking are 20 minutes ahead of the curve. So within the next 18 months to 2 to 3 years, this is all going to become reality. And whenever I have a conversation and an argument with somebody who says, "Well, this is too much like science fiction, it's not going to happen," it's when these technologies are used for greater good. So if you're looking about drones that are taking life-giving medicines to remote areas, to disaster zones, an Ebola-struck area, it suddenly makes sense, and people say, "Well, why didn't we use this earlier?" The tricky thing is that we are at a fork in the road with all of this technology because we haven't got the regulations. So drones can now be used for, there's a company in Pretoria actually that are developing drones that will monitor riots, and they will throw, they will do pepper spray onto rioting crowds. So you've got this weird paradigm where we've got technology for greater good and technology that can be used for other purposes, and we're not quite sure where that fork in the road is going to take us.
I'm going to bring Trudi in at this point. Does this excite you? This kind of a technology that's on offer. Does it sound real to you, Trudi?
It excites me. Obviously there'll be different rates of adoption of this technology to our context. I think what I find most exciting about a lot of it is that it lowers the barriers to entry, both from a business and from a personal perspective. So from a business perspective, if someone is trying to get into a new industry, say they want to get into media or even medicine, in the past it used to be massive investment. You'd have to tap into financial markets, and some of the technology Dion talks about will probably still entail that. But some of it does mean that you're able to leapfrog. I mean, even what we're doing now, we're having this whole conversation. We don't need expensive studios. We don't have 20 people of crew, managing us. So in a way, all of this lowers barriers to entry in many industries and makes it possible for entrepreneurs to thrive. And also just for ordinary people, making services that would have been absolute luxuries, a generation away. Even in terms of healthcare, once again, the kinds of treatment that would not be accessible in a public health setting, for instance, if we get our act together, would be able to reach people in the most remote areas, the most remote clinics, the whole innovations around telemedicine, mobile medicine, etc. All of that means greater service delivery ultimately. So it is quite exciting. Some of it makes me a bit nervous because it also says, what does this mean for some livelihood, some people who made career choices and a living, as a traditional doctor or as the cameraman in a studio, who are suddenly going to be displaced by all of this. And, we're talking about change moments, might not necessarily have the skills, guidance, resources to repurpose their career and redirect it to catch up with all of this that's happening. So, I see a lot of hope, but the transition will probably be a bit painful for those who've sunk investments in the old world, so to speak. But I think it's always like that with innovation, that it's improving people's lives, but there are those who find themselves on the margins.
What I find very interesting about this entire discussion is that, and I have absolutely no doubt you are correct, Dion, with the vision that you are putting forward, is that it's all very dependent on the World Wide Web. It's dependent on the internet. And I suppose none of this is really going to work, and it's not going to work for anybody who's making key decision changes in their lives, wants to tap into the new trends. As Trudi says, the barriers for entry will come down if you have good coverage. And until we've got good internet coverage, low fast download speeds and low data charges in South Africa, this is going to be a bit of a way off. And we've already seen the rest of Africa going ahead of South Africa when it comes to digital technology. Do you think we're missing the boat here, that we're not getting the technology right for people to take advantage of these growing trends?
I think we've got the capacity to get the technology right. I think going back to Trudi's first statement about sort of state of economy and where we are, I really do think we are stuck in an old world order in terms of the profit margins, all of that. The growing inequality and the voices that you're starting to see around the world is really pointing to doing things in a very, very different way. And the reason why I say that these specific industries have been shielded from the digitalization is that the revolution is coming, and you're completely right. I mean, a city like Kigali in Rwanda is leaps and bounds ahead of South Africa in terms of supporting entrepreneurs, in terms of registering a company. You're able to register a company in a couple of hours to get it going. They've understood the fact that which everybody knows, is that the more broadband and the more connectivity you give to your society in a country will raise the GDP of that country. So I think I feel personally that we are being held to ransom by, I'll call it the evil tripartite alliance of the telecom companies in South Africa, who in the past couple of years we have had these undersea cables connect to Africa. There is the capability to do that, but I think greed gets in the way, and we need to look at things a little bit differently. And business, nothing's got to give within business to manage that.
I've got a question here from Susanna, who says, I'd love to hear from Dion how technology will change financial services, how it will affect us as individuals who use the products. Now, internet banking is nothing new in South Africa, though obviously things will move forward rapidly. How do you see the financial services changing as we look forward in 2015 and beyond, Dion?
Well, I think there's a really, really big change, because I think if you look at how financial services are structured, or how they were born in the 20th century, was that a third party always used to sell your product. And fundamentally for me it's I'll put my kind of marketing hat on for that, and looking at consumer experiences and how because Suzette says, how will it affect us as individuals who use the product. I think the access to the products is the first way of doing things, because as you said, in the banking world, they've learned very, very quickly that you have to have a direct line of contact and communication to your customer, and you have to do that. So financial services who rely on third parties to be able to represent not only the brand but also to sell the product is problematic for me in a digital era, because you want to have really, really quick, easy access to the source of whatever that financial service is. And then we're actually talking about the different products, and that gets really interesting if we're talking about life-changing moments. Because I mean, one of the trends that we put, which is sort of a red flag just to get people there, that is the rise of egg-freezing parties, which started in New York last year. But it's a very what's underneath that is really something that is going to shake the financial services up, because you're getting a lot of women who are deciding to have children much, much later. So your baby boomer generation would marry in their early 20s. My mom got married at 18. You were able to have your kids and then still save for retirement after that. What's happening now in the 21st century is delayed parenting. So through science and through healthcare, you're able to have that. And in my own circle of friends, I've got about 3 or 4 female friends who are having babies, if not their first, their second child in their 40s, which means that the whole way in which you look at savings and the way in which you manage those life-changing moments are all converging much, much later. So all the algorithms and things that the financial services have worked out in terms of savings and how you charge people for those kind of things, it's all been disrupted, and that disorder goes into even that way of doing things. So I think there's going to be a real shake-up, because it is a very, very definite trend of delayed parenting and trying to do things much, much later, and trying to have it all with a solid career and especially if you look at millennial females, they unlike the previous generations, their mothers, they didn't want to have it all, but they want to try it all, and they definitely want to bounce back into the workforce. So all of those kind of traditional roles and how you look at finances is going to change, and will be disrupted as well.
And it's a perfect time to bring in somebody like you, Trudi, who a woman who's been so successful, though I'm sure you would have felt there would have been other pressures put on you in terms of family, do you put family first, career first? Men haven't had to bother with that kind of thing. Just picking up from what Dion has been talking about there, that women now through the egg freezing are putting things like raising a family on hold while they get their careers going. Do you see that as something of a growing trend?
It's certainly a growing trend. I think we should unpack some of the reasons, behind all of this. I think there's expectations in general that women have of success of their careers, but I also think the way that the workplace is structured and how success is defined nowadays often means many years of post-matric study that women simply don't necessarily have an option to defer. So in a way, I think it's not necessarily that it's completely optional that women are putting off, or rather that women are responding to incentives around them that have to do with the way the world is structured. And perhaps we should think about doing things differently as a society as a whole, but of course that will also mean men changing how they structure their careers and how they're rewarded, so that when a woman pulls out of the active labor force in their 20s or so, they're not penalized for that. Having said that, I think it is a positive development that there's even greater choices that women have in terms of these technologies, in terms of, say, freezing eggs. It might do what contraceptives did in the 60s in terms of, even expanding the choices that one has. It probably does have an impact on the economy as a whole that we'll see as generations go on. For instance, it would tend to reduce family size if women are waiting much later. I think in terms of the way people think about their finances, I wouldn't say it's all equivalent at the end of it all. But if you do take a life cycle view, you could be working, in the old days, you'd be working and spending on a family pretty much simultaneously. Whereas now, you're saving a bit of a cushion, a fund that will prepare you to have kids, say, in your late 30s and 40s. But does that mean that you then keep on working in those 30s and 40s? I think it also opens other types of options where people are taking sabbaticals in mid-career because they've built up a financial cushion to be able to do that. Some people joke about creating their own trust funds, and they can go off and explore other things later in life in a way that wasn't possible earlier on. So does it make for a wealthier world? Probably not. I think we're just shifting around finances in a lifetime. But one would then have to have very different advice. The advice that we used to get in our 20s, that now you're going to be spending all your money on a family, and then you save much later. Obviously, it doesn't hold anymore. You actually, paying it up front and then having the family time and then having to think about retirement, which also means that financial products have to be a bit more complex to take advantage of that. There might be times when you're out of the labor force and you're not saving for retirement at all. There might be times also, I think employers would have to rethink, or governments and employers rethink retirement ages, because it might be that you're being asked to retire when your kids are just completing high school. So I think that a lot of that will shift with these options. But I think if they're exercised in a way that is empowering of women, that's great. The Google thing was a bit controversial in Facebook because it seemed as if they were trying to encourage women to delay, childbirth. I didn't see that way. I thought what they were trying to say that for those women who actually it hasn't happened for whatever reason, they haven't met the right person, here's another avenue. But the moment it becomes pressure to say, actually, you have to, you don't need to go off and have kids in your 20s anymore, then that's where it becomes a bit problematic for me.
We
almost out of time. Sorry, Dion, you want to pick up there?
No, I just wanted to second what Trudi was saying, because one of the other trends that we've been doing is looking at the death of the career, really. I mean, or the single career. It's the future of work. Yes. And the death of the career is that you are going to probably have 5, if not more, especially on our young generation, different career trajectories. And exactly what Trudi's saying is, I think the challenge for financial services is to create really different products. So you're moving into a complex world, and the Japanese have a fantastic word for it. They call it career kaizen, which means that you kind of work a little bit, and then you take a sabbatical. You upskill yourself at different times of your life. You go into a different career trajectory. You might work a little bit more, study a bit more, and that kind of the fluidity and the transience of different careers is going to be a reality. It's already started, and you're already seeing an older workforce who just don't want to retire, and those are becoming your new entrepreneurs. So everything's been sort of shifted around, and I think that's going to be a very, very interesting way of doing things, and especially if you look at people's I think specifically the attachment to material goods. I spoke of transient ownership before, and I think those sort of new concepts are going to kind of feed different lifestyles and enable people to do things at different times of their lives. So instead of an endowment policy that pays you out on death, is rather give me something that I'll be able to use to upskill myself at 45 or at 50 or something like that, to start a new trajectory.
What I also found interesting when you're talking about careers and the way people will practice their careers, put it that way, is that possibly we're going to start seeing the end of the office when we deal, and that people will be working from home because technology will allow that, and that's I don't know if that's a trend for the future. It's something that's happening right now.
It's absolutely happening right now, but I think what is really interesting is that in trends the pendulum swings back and forth quite rapidly and very, very often, and you're starting to see that although people like the remote working, you still also crave some of that kind of the social interaction of it. So you've got different concepts that are coming through now of hot desking, and they're calling it work popcorning. So you literally start off in a boardroom, you go off to a coffee office somewhere else, and then you do a Google Hangout with things. So I think it's going to be a very, very interesting thing in terms of technology. It's going to really free people up, but we are all social beings, and you want that kind of interactivity. So it's going to be a hybrid of a lot of things. So even in the e-commerce space where we do a lot of work, is you're starting to see not just online or offline. People want a little bit of activity online, and offline they want a bit of digitization. So it's a nice hybrid of everything, and then that's the challenge going forward, I think, for all industries.
I want to touch on one last thing because we're almost out of time, and it's the issue of well, I can combine a whole lot of elements. We look at the growth or the talk of the need to grow small business entrepreneurs, small entrepreneurs, and then I look at people who need the consumers who are looking for the fast and easy way to buy their products. There must be a fabulous coming together of those two elements, Trudi, with the growing trends. Technology helping people set up small businesses, and small businesses then assisting people who are the consumers, so growing the online shopping experience possibly.
Exactly. And I think, of course, we need to develop the supporting infrastructure around that. And once again, some of our challenges are actually opportunities. So if e-commerce is going to take off, and it already has in many ways, the postal service, unfortunately, given what's been happening over the past few years, will have to be circumvented. And so that creates opportunities, be it delivery by drones, ultimately, but also more small-scale, entrepreneurs who could be running courier-type services. With more personalized services, also, you find that there's a whole range of opportunity that then opens for people. Those kinds of websites where you can offer to go buy someone's grocery or pick up their medicine. All of that opens up opportunity for young people who, for instance, would have never really had any other entry point into the economy. So the minute you get them online, you get people with needs that need to be fulfilled. You also, in South Africa, we also have a bit of an aging population, not as much as Europe, but about 10% of our population is old. You have all these young people. If you find ways to bring together platforms that they can be assisting those older people, you have instances where information is very difficult to get hold of for lots of young people. But once you have platforms, even Kickstarter type, platforms that have taken off overseas, where people can bring their ideas and say, I have this fabulous idea for an African-inspired cutlery range. Who wants to finance that? And somebody from Cape Town puts their hands up and say, I want to support that entrepreneur. So I think a lot is possible. We just need to get rid to fix the small little frictions that get in the way. But I'm very optimistic that there's a lot that technology could do to actually get us out of some of the ruts that we find ourselves in terms of our low growth prospects. So I think we have to tap into the creativity of young people, think differently about the skills that they need, think differently about how we invest and incentivize employers to take them on. And so I do see that opportunity that comes for small business. I just think we just need to go that extra mile to tap into it.
Dion, I'm going to give you the last question, and I want you now to give us a real science fiction answer here. Is there a particular trend that when you tell people about it, they do think you're smoking your socks? One that you know is going to become a reality. Is there a particular trend like that?
For me, it's drones. I am so emphatic about the future of drones. I've already seen there's a company in London who have already started a company which is drone on demand. And anybody who's used Uber, it's the same experience. You literally call a drone in, and it works, as I said before, on the same GPS ways of doing things. I've just seen so much evidence of where we're going. The legislation, like I said, has not caught up, and it is going to be. And when people say, and I love the cynicism of South Africans, and whenever I have this conversation, they say, well, somebody in South Africa is just going to shoot my drone down and steal the stuff that they're going to deliver for me. And I say well, that's a fantastic opportunity for short-term insurance, because nobody's worked that one out. There's no product for that yet, and hence there's an opportunity. And just finally, in terms of the reason why I love my job as well, is that I think the world is shifting so fundamentally and so fast. To what Trudi is saying, is that there are so many new opportunities. You've got to just really look in different places to see it. And I hate the expression to think out the box. I rather say just rethink the entire package. So look at the packaging completely differently, and I think there's lots of opportunities there.
Give us a Twitter handle at Flux Trends, I would presume, if people want to follow you on Twitter and follow you on your website, fluxtrends.co.za. Is that right, Dion?
And my personal one is at Dion Chang. So just one word, at Dion Chang or at Flux Trends.
Oh, okay. It's as simple as that. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you, Dion. Thank you very much. And Trudi, for people, are you on Twitter? Are you a social media fan?
Absolutely. At Trudi Makhaya, also just one word.
You're so lucky to have your own names to do it. My thanks to Trudi, my thanks to Dion as well. My thanks to you as well for being with us for this IRIS session with BrightRock. We'll be having them once a month, and for the next IRIS session with BrightRock, I would suggest you follow BrightRock on Twitter as well, at BrightRock ZA. From me, David O Sullivan, thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.
Thank you.